So we are going to start with the 7 centers of consciousness. So it's similar to the chakras, but the chakras is a whole other situation. So the 7 centers of consciousness. So if we look at the lower 3 chakras, so the root, the sacral, and the solar, they operate in a space of safety, pleasure, and power. And if we look at how we are relaying or moving within relationships, the moment that we don't get safety, pleasure, or power in either we're taking or giving, we instantly don't want to be part of that relationship anymore. And we see this when we are if we're in a situation, if we have a relationship with this person and then they have to move to a different place, we instantly don't have this safety because they're not in the same space. And maybe this connects to you haven't lived alone, blah, 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 blah. So we're losing that sense of safety, and because of that closeness is not there, then you're not getting pleasure from sex. And then maybe you are the more dominant person in the relationship, so there's not that power dynamic that you used to thrive off of. So usually when your relationships are based off those 3 chakras, you're operating in those spaces, the relationships don't tend to be successful because one of those things aren't being fulfilled, and it's not coming from here. It's a love of those 3 different areas in the body. So when we are moving through and rising the Kundalini, there's this perception that the Kundalini rises once, it's this explosion, and then that's it. We don't got to do nothing anymore. We're enlightened, everything's awakened. But it's not like that. We can have a Kundalini rising, that expression, that movement, but then we had that experience, but then we have to integrate it. So we have to continuously be rising the Kundalini, because it can come back down. It can just be not today, and go back into the bottom of the spine. And there's also this misconception that the essence of that energy is at the base of the spine and it rises. It does spring up from the root and go all the way up through the body, but it has to come through the solar plexus. It goes through the solar plexus down into the root and then springs up into the body. So if you've been watching any of my other lives, you know that we've been doing a lot of breath of fire and a lot of core exercises, because we're igniting that power to come in through the navel point down into the root and come spring up into the body. So we need to continuously do this every day. So with the Kundalini yoga, it's we're practicing how to move the Kundalini up the spine every day, to feel open, to feel present, to be here. So when we are moving out of those 3 lower chakras, that's when we have a purity in the way that we were relaying in relationships. And we hear this all the time. It's if you truly love someone, there's not going to be that attachment piece. Hello, Helen. Make sure that I'm on track here. So there's not going to be that attachment piece, because your relationship is not relying on pleasure, safety, or power. And when we are operating in those lower centers, our communication is very, very limited. So this whole thing that we're talking about is conscious communication. And when we are operating in those lower centers, when we're afraid and we're not receiving any pleasure, or there's too much pleasure, or we don't have that sense of power in a certain dynamic, then we can't, it's okay, Helen, then we can't have very conscious communication, because we're only in those 3 areas. And when the energy moves all the way up to the spine, the Kundalini is reaching and it hits the crown, and it's, whoa, when it's going up in that space, we've made that beacon, that echo up into the ethers of I'm ready for clear expansion, I'm ready for clear connection. So we have to make that conscious choice of, I'm ready to move out of those lower centers and allow that connection between source and the body. And then we're getting through this. All right, so where do I want to go from here? All right, and then in those lower centers, that's where all the addictions like the fester, and it controls the way that we operate. And we are, like, on a small scale or a large scale, very addicted to certain people or different things, and that also stops our ability to have conscious communication, because we're just trying to reach that pleasure center. We're just trying to reach that sense of security, and we aren't actually looking from a third perspective or an objective perspective to different spaces. And the whole point of like understanding conscious communication and being connected in that way is because we need that conscious connection and being out of those lower centers in order to actually retrieve the intuitive information in a clean and proper way, and not it being filtered through those lower areas, because then we can never give clean advice. We never can give clean content because it's going through like a filter of fear, or a filter of not enough, or a filter of you're not powerful enough. So moving into this conscious communication in regards to this intuitive mapping piece that I keep talking about. And when I say intuitive mapping, it's like literally it's a map that I have, and it's like the different layers. So it has your like your chakras and your elements and different entities, and the polarities, and it has all these different areas, and you can visualize this in your mind and connect to those pieces visually, and sort of picture it like a game. So like you can see your map, and then there's masculine and feminine, and then maybe the throat chakra piece like lights up for information. And you need to be able to build a relationship with all these different entities, all these different beings, all these different chakras at a deeper level. And how that happens is if we like reveal who we are, reveal the secrets. Because the only way a successful relationship can prosper is if we fully reveal who we are. And we have to build a conscious communication relay with these different chakras, not just the one that's inside of you, but the one that is in every being. So the essence of the throat chakra is very important for you to understand and build a relationship with, because when you do that, then it invites you to its friends. So it invites you to the essence and the feeling of wealth. It invites you to meet its friend with sound. It invites you to be friends with all the thing that connects to that entity and that space. So when we look at the map, when you're pulling in that intuitive knowing, it's gonna ping that throat chakra in your mat. It's gonna ping that thing about an entity, but because you have a relationship with what the throat chakra, the essence of the throat chakra is, and you've built that over time, then it's going to give you very clean information, and it's not going to be filtering through the lower centers. And sort of picture it as you're building a structure for the information. So if I said, here is a floor plan of a home, and then you're like, you have no connection to it because it just lines on a piece of paper. But then a construction human goes and puts up the pillars. You still don't really have a connection to it because it's just wood. But then you start going into the store and you look at different patterns and different feelings, and then you can sort of picture how that would look in your mind. So then you start to build a relationship with the home, with the space, before it's even built. And we have to continuously do that when we're working with this intuitive energy, because it's never going to be fully here. It's never going to be fully in your hands, but you have to allow yourself to build a structure in your mind so that it can paint the walls for you. so it can put the furniture in with the leather that you like, so that it's going to give you information that you are going to understand. Because we're like, I close my eyes and it's just like, we're getting all this info, but we don't know how to store it. All I know is I'm getting a tingle over here, and that kind of connects to this. But when you're playing those games of it might connect to this, or it might mean this, and the information is getting lost in translation. So it's our responsibility as an intuitive to give that information a home. Give it somewhere to breathe and to live. And when you're doing this work, it's like these two centers are your power points. Obviously the other ones are important, but this is where it's going to fully expand into the space. And what I see with this intuitive map is like a ghost will come in on the right side, and it will start to communicate all these different languages or concepts. And if we don't have the articulation or the words or the ability, hello Vanessa, or the ability to like take that, digest it fully, and then give it to the space, then we're not honoring our purpose. We're not honoring our ability to give. So we always have to make sure that we're allowing that energy to move up the spine, ignite that Kundalini every day, so you're operating up here and you're not operating down there. Because there's nothing worse than you sitting over here getting information, trying to do a reading, but you're like, I don't have no food in my fridge, or I don't, like, you're in this fear space. So the information that's coming through, it's like hitting your fear spots. So then you start to communicate, this is your reading, this is your thoughts, and it's not. I've seen this in action. I think it was like after an attunement, and we were doing like a trading thing with other level 2s, and this person was very intensely like 100%, this is what's wrong with you, this is what you need to do. And it wasn't that at all. It wasn't her stuff. It was literally his stuff, but he was so connected to that information because he was embodying it, that he was putting it on the other person. And as we move in through this new era, that's not how things are going to work. That's not how it's going to be, because we're in the era of transparency, and you're not going to be able to lie to yourself. You're not going to be able to lie to the people that you're giving the information to, because people are more they're more connected to what resonance is, regardless if they use that term or that word. They're going to be like, I'm not really feeling that. So we have to be able to make sure that we aren't hiding behind our own delusions or illusions about what the information means. And that's why it's so important to have that structure and that scaffolding, so that it can just sit nice and cute in the space, and you know exactly what it means, and it'll give you a higher sense of empowerment when something comes in and you can just say it directly, and you're not like, well, it kind of connects to here and then it goes over there, and sometimes we do have to do that if we're just coming in, but we want to get to the space where it's just like wadum, 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 because with this new shift on the earth, the energy is very fast, and it's going to be very obvious if you aren't connected, if you aren't allowing that information to come through as cleanly as possible. All right, next thing we want to touch on. All right, so the next thing that I want to talk about is how this conscious communication develops like physically in the body. So not only are you building this like map of all the different words that, you know, chakras and elements, and you can see that in your mind, so it can have a glowing resonance when you close your eyes and give you that information. There's also this conscious communication that happens within the body, and you can start to train yourself to, maybe my ear twitches when it's this, or maybe I get a little nudge in my knee when this happens. Because if you're very like a physical human and you need things to be like, I'm here, I'm ready, then you can allow your body to give you that communication. And it's super cool how this develops over time, because then you build a very deep connection to yourself. Because it's like, if this ear is twitching at this point and giving me this piece of information, and you're not doing a reading, you're not talking to anyone, then obviously that one's for you. And I find that the more that you move your body in new ways, it kind of like shifts the spine in like certain direction and kind of clicks it in its proper position. So if you're in the morning, you're like, I'm all cracked, and you realign that physically within the spine. It's like you don't even understand how much that straight aligned spine matters with that conscious communication. It's like this pure directness. It's like this sweet nectar that like falls down from the crown into the body, and it's just like this deep knowing that you resonate with, and you're allowing yourself to give. And you're gonna know whether it's a communication that is pure or not pure if you're kind of like if you're like, I'm not sure I'm gonna be saying this. Because if you have a resistance to the information that's coming through, then that means it's not pure, because everything is being ripped and shredded in this space. And why, like, I'm setting it up for conscious communication and all the senses and chakras, and why that's happening over the next 7 days, because I want to get like a deep understanding of different concepts, so that when you are building your own, it's like you have that relationship built and ready. Because every energy, every entity can like be something in your space that you can communicate with as if it was a person. And then you can have a bunch of friends around, and it's very comforting if you can make this in your mind, and you're not going crazy. It's not like you're not losing it. It's just like, here is the essence of the root chakra, and it's very like, maybe it's a female figure and it's very earthy and it likes these types of food. Like, you're gonna build all these different entities in your space that you're gonna pull from, that's gonna feed your mind and your body and your ability to give. Hello, Bailey. Hello. Yes. Yeah, we got through a lot of content. It sounded like a lot more when I wrote it down, but here we are. Again, so I just want to give an example of the importance of what that relationship looks like. So for me, the Reiki energy, I see it as like a glowing orb version of myself. So it'll just like, be sitting beside me, hanging out, and because it's pure love and it has its own intelligence, then it's just like, it feeds my brain information. And it's like, we really have to embody this idea of like, we are just a vessel open and ready for whatever needs to be funneled in, and we have to allow the ego, or the essence of what Mariah is, to step out of that space, because it's just like, you're literally allowing another entity to sit inside of the body and to be present in this physical space. And that's why sometimes you don't feel like connected to your space. You're like, I don't even know where I am, because it's like you're allowing yourself to step out of the space and for that entity to be there. And you'll notice that when your voice changes, or your eyes are all weird, or you randomly can start to do different things with your body or your mind, and you're having all these new different concepts that you've never had, it's because you're allowing that different energy, because you've built that relationship. So you're allowing it in your space. And we have to continually shed and keep shedding. And I know over the last like month or so, It's been like really, it's been real intense, guys, because it's just like, I'm not like I'm losing myself, but I'm allowing that the old thought patterns of who I was to just sort of die. And it's like this mourning process of like, the world needs leaders so much that I'm gonna just allow this process to happen, and everyone's doing that in their own sort of capacity. And it's kind of scary because you're just getting all this information, and sometimes I'm just there like, all right, can you slow down, because I need to write this down and it needs to be structured, and can you give me like it in like steps, because it's like so much. and like the content that's coming through for this the Creative Ascension Intuitive Mapping program, I'm in the shower like, holy molas, whoa, because it's like the concepts that are coming through are just like beyond anything that I thought was a thing. It's taking like concepts that I thought, ripping them apart, throwing them over here, putting them back together, and then giving them, I mean, like, here, this is something that you'll understand, this is something that's juicy, this is something that you can teach and continue to learn. And it's like, this is the time to build that scaffolding and that structure, because if you don't build the structure and the scaffolding for that learning process, it's just like, you're not going to be able to operate. You're not going to be able to give the most effectively because it's just going to be overflowing, but there's no sides of the river holding the flow. It's just an infinite ocean of information, and there's like no way of giving it direction, and that's the purpose and the reason for the human body, the human mind, is to take all the stuff in the ethers and funnel it through the body and give it a direction. And we're doing that when we have our businesses. It's just like you get in the concepts and you're translating it, digesting it, and then giving it direction in the world, and you're directing it to certain clients, you're directing it to certain industries, and you're allowing it to like prosper in a different way. And I know I keep saying as we move forward, but as we do move forward, it's like that essence of that energy is going to be so pure and potent and thick and juicy that you're going to have to be able to handle that. Because it's such a beautiful thing when you get that eureka moment and it's just for you, you know, and then you're like, oh my God, it all makes sense. And then you can like cut it and sliver it and transform it, and it's just like you can take one concept that you've downloaded and then make an entire program on it, or make an entire movie or some piece of art around that one thing. And that's like one of the most beautiful things about the human mind, is it likes to make connections. And this is like, if you like problem solving, now's the time to take all that information that you're getting and piecing it together. And one of the projects that I'm revealing in the 4 Pillars of the Success program, they're only like almost a month in, is like a piece of it, no spoilers, is that you're gonna have to take different pieces of information and make something new, make something that doesn't make sense to you, but somehow it resonates. And we're continuously doing that with the communication that we're getting. And it's like, we need to continue to learn and to read and to watch people and just flip all over the place with different ways of learning and being, because some of the stuff, it's just like our brains can't even comprehend, and people need that information. So we all gotta get smarter up in here. We all gotta have better language up in here so that we can pull it through effectively. Yes. Any questions about that? And it gets super fun when you can like have all these different, I'm just like chilling in my room and there's like 20 people in there. Well, not people, like different entities. And you can like, with your mind, you can sculpt how you want them to look. So it's like, okay, if this thing is in the space, then I know that this type of energy is coming through. It's like you're creating that path and network and trigger point for you to know what's going to happen next. And a great analogy of like the Kundalini coming up and you getting that information and trusting it is that you are like a tree, and the trunk just keep growing and growing, and you are reaching so high above the earth that you're feeling all of the winds, you're feeling all of that movement, you're feeling may have missed some lessons here, but how do we build the framework and structure? We'll get into it. What was I saying? So when we are a tree, and our branches are like they're very, very high, and we're reaching, we're growing, and we're growing, and we're growing, and our rhythm, Kundalini is rising, we're very strong, and we're connected. We're gonna feel that wind and the wars in the galaxy and all these different downloads. We're gonna experience all that movement before anything on the ground does. So when you get that thought or that idea or whatever, and it doesn't even make sense in this realm that we're living, you're just connecting because your branches are high up there connecting to that new information, and it's your job for that information to be absorbed within the branches, embodied in you, and you be the animated translation of that information. So you're not crazy if something new comes in and it's totally way out there. There's a reason that it's there, and it's your job to look into that. And then Hillary said, how do we build the framework and the structure? So in a different program, so the Creative Ascension intuitive mapping, but I'll just tell you how the thing works. So what you want to do is you want to look at different areas of what you want to connect to. So the next 7 days we go through like the chakras and the divine polarities and different things. So just for a quick example, if you want to build an intuitive map and a structure and a scaffolding for that information to come in, it's going to require you to choose what you want to connect to, and then you're trying to really build that ability to see like your imagination within your mind, because that's going to be very powerful for that information to come through. So what's going to happen is you really want to connect, say, to your throat space. So then it's just like, well, I'm going to create this intention that I want to connect to the essence and the foundation of what the throat chakra is. So the throat chakra is wealth, communication, trust, the color blue, water. So you're going to connect with those different entities, and it's going to be a roller coaster, because you have to like do a lot of like meditation, and it's like you want to come to the point where the essence, the energy of that throat chakra, that's not just in you but in everything, because everything has, like the earth has chakras, animals have chakras. It's going to communicate to you in a new way. You're building this new relationship that you haven't even experienced. So then it's going to start saying like, when I feel like this, or when you see this in the space, this is what I'm speaking to you. Or when you feel this emotion in this part of the body, this is what I'm speaking to you. You're building that relationship within this like astral space through your meditation. And then, hello Morgan, hello Nat. And then with the visualization, you're closing your eyes and we're just focusing on the throat. So then it was just kind of like a screen. We did this meditation the other day, so it's a screen. And so your main focus is the throat. So the throat chakra is in the middle. So then all of the information that's floating around, anything that's pertaining to the throat that's important for you to communicate, it's gonna come down, and then you're gonna tell this astral intuitive map that you've created in your mind through guided meditation that it's gonna ping or light up or move in a certain way when you close your eyes to give you that information. It's stimulating a certain part of the brain when that happens. And so you have like the throat chakra in the middle in this meditation on this map. This is why I have a course for this, because it gets a little intense. So you have your screen, but then maybe you bring in another element. So then you kind of move the throat chakra over here, and then maybe you want to connect with different beings. So then that adds another layer. So then on your little map, just picture like a piece of paper, throat chakra with a circle around it, and then entities with a circle around it. And obviously in your pretty meditation, it can be all fancy and stuff. So then when all this information is coming through, and if this has nothing to do with the throat chakra, it just like an entity wants to like help you with the healing, then it comes through, and then you can see in this map when you close your eyes, but you're training yourself to do all the time, which I see all the time. Then it's just like maybe it rotates like this and moves this way. It's just like you're connecting to the movement and the communication of each of those things when you have your map. So every day we're talking about communication. So this is like the foundation, because you're communicating with all these different entities. And then it's like chakras and your senses and the different entities and the polarities and what else we got? And then connecting to different realities and bodies. So on this map, we have like all of the chakras laid out, all of the elements laid out, the different polarities laid out, the different bodies, physical, mental, emotional. So we have that all mapped out in like a physical, if you're going to draw it on a piece of paper, it would have all of those points. And over the time, we build this map, but I want you to get deep into each section of those, so that when you're building this, it's not just words on a map in your mind, it's not just words on a piece of paper, it's like you've built that deep relationship with each entity, so that when something comes in, you know exactly what it's for, you know exactly how it needs to come through, you know exactly what it means. Hopefully that made some sense. I've just been using this like map thing for a while, so it's very crystal clear. But if you're new to meditation or new to like visualizing like something in your mind with like all these different buttons, then obviously it's going to be a different experience. But this is going to train your no head. So the experience with this map, it's going to strengthen your ability to see, because we need to be able to consume the information with all our senses. So when the entity's like, hey, how you doing? It's just like, well, are we hearing something? Are we getting a taste in our mouth? Are we smelling something that's giving us a piece of information? We want to be able to like tap into all those different pieces. Any more questions about the intuitive mapping? And it's just like, I'm just touching base on like the things that we know, like chakras and different bodies. Like we can continuously add on the sides and on the bottom, on the top. It can be as intense and extensive as you want. But I'm just starting with like the core things that we know and that we can relate to. And I've said this before, where we don't want to bring our own like personal experiences into the reading of the information, and that's when we have to, throw ourselves back and allow the things that come through that we don't like. It's like you connect it with it so deeply, but that also it doesn't connect to anything in your life. And it's okay to use our life experience as like reference points, but not the bridge to give the information. And you're not jumping ahead, Hillary. You're not jumping ahead. Yeah. Any more questions about the intuitive mapping process? And I've like talked a lot about the chakras in this conscious communication, but that's just how we are as humans. We're like either communicating down in the lower 3 chakras, or we're not. So when we move into like the chakra talk on Wednesday, it's going to be more talking about like what the essence of each one, and you're going to be able to build a better entity, because I want everyone that does the Creative Ascension intuitive mapping program to be able to like visualize every word that's on this map that you get, like in the room with them, and have a big old party in the communication. And one of the exercises that I love to do is I might do this on the intuitive bodies one. I'll do a guided meditation, but it's like we walk you through you as the essence of the being, but then we have like your mental body, your emotional body, your physical body, your mental body as 4 different beings in the space, and they're just like the full essence of that body, and you get to have a conversation with those bodies. And it's so interesting because like the emotional body is just going to make you feel like, it's just going to make you feel really intense, and you get to communicate through the meditation on how you want your emotional body to move forward with you. Like obviously it's a very feeling, but you get to have that verbal conversation if you wish. And I find with the meditations that I do, if I leave spaces for you to fill in, it's just like the mind will instantly give you the answer. So if I'm saying your verbal body turns to you and says, then it's just like whatever comes through is going to be exactly what you need to hear, because through the beginning of that meditation, we've built it up, we've built the room, we've built the space, we've built the intention, we've built all this thing, so now everything is primed and ready for the answers to come through. And we want to be able to connect to our 4 bodies in such a deep way that when we're getting information about other people, we know exactly the difference. We know that, okay, Sally is sad over here and I'm Sally, so that's definitely not the thing that's coming in. So we know the difference. What else we got here? One of the cool things, I've been tapping into like elements, and I'm finding that if you can like really get into what the essence of the elements mean, it'll make your intuitive gifts and powers more interesting. And what I've found with the Reiki practice and like this creative ascension intuitive mapping program is the same day as the starts. It's a month thing, same day as the Reiki. So I think there's 2 people that won. So Nat and Eileen won the creative ascension thing. And it's like, it's a perfect correlation, because when we tap into the elements, we can start bringing our different bodies and different elements and all these different entities into the space when we're doing healings on ourselves and healings on other people. And I did a meditation with a client, and it's just like there's a lot of womb things that we had to work on. So I'm in there, I can visualize seeing, scraping out the stuff, pulling that out, and then lighting on fire the things that need to go, and bringing in the wind and letting that move away, and then patting it down with earth. It's like such an interesting thing, because you can actually feel like the mud that's created, you can feel the heat, you can feel all the things that you bring in. And it's so important that we strengthen our seeing and our hearing and our tasting and our breath, so that we can experience the depthness of our intuitive nature and our intuitive gifts, because it's like this beautiful symphony of sound and colors and feelings and emotions, and seeing when you're working with people and you're working with your own body. And your intuitive nature is going to be the foundation of how you move in the future. And I wrote a post recently about how like people are very afraid to pivot or shift or change their title, because they don't think that they have the skills or the knowledge to move into this new space. But it's like, you're just gonna forget about the first 25 years of your life? Like, you have so many skills. Just because you didn't learn all those skills with the intention of that title doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It doesn't mean that you don't have the skills to perform. So you just have to take off that hat, put on a new one. And that was a major shift for me when I realized, like, I've been doing this coaching thing like the whole time. I've been doing this all the time. I was doing it from just a different angle, but then it ends up that I'm still doing exactly what I did before, but instead of me like hovering over a physical body, it's just like I realized, like, oh, I can do the entire session of Reiki while I'm looking at them and talking them at the same time and see what's going on and use the elements and look at their bodies. Like, you can do all of the things at the same time. You just have to build the capacity and awareness and the space to be able to do that. It's like, because there's like 4 different storylines happening at once, but I have to be able to take them all and then digest them and then give them to the human. And it's like everyone's capable of that. It's just realizing that it's okay to change the title. It's okay to move into a different space. And the only reason that we're changing the title is because it feels better in this physical realm that we're operating in. It just resonates better. But we can't forget about everything that we learned before. It's like, you're here, you're ready to serve, and all of that, all of your intuitive nature, or if you're developing it, it's like, that's the hardest part. Like, you literally can be good at anything you want as long as you have some intuitive ability, because you're going to be able to read things, understand things, take in things at a higher caliber, because you just know, yeah, that's a good decision. That's not a good decision. Yes, we should buy that. No, we shouldn't buy that. Like, it's just going to be a natural way of being. So just allow yourself to come into that, like, I am ready to move into the high chakras, and because we're always like ebbing and flowing, no one's perfect, but like, I'm ready to like see through a different filter and a different lens, give myself a new different hat, and allow my senses to just explode, because there is like this shift that happens with the senses where it's just like, nothing's going on to everything's going on, and it's a lot, and you're like, and it's just like, sometimes we need that really intense switch for the universe to be like, bro, we need you to stand up and do some stuff, so we're just gonna turn everything on, and then everything is on, and that's where the structure comes for. That's why we need the scaffolding, because a lot of people's switches are being turned on in regards to their senses, and now they have all this information, they don't know how to digest it. So this intuitive mapping situation is, its goal is for you to be able to fill in the holes and know exactly what needs to be said, when it needs to be done, what does it mean, who it needs to be said to, when you need to show up, when you need to go on a live, like when you need to do all the things. So yeah, well, this went on a turn, but important information. Any other questions? Let's check my notes to see if I missed anything. So again, I want to row, and then I don't really look at my notes that much. One of the things that I wrote down was that I'm just tapping into, again, this idea of like your communication is limited when you're operating in the lower 3 chakras. So if you're not getting pleasure, safety, or power from that relay or that relationship, because it's like limited, you're only operating here. But the only way that we can like move into the higher ways of operating like fully is if we take responsibility for our addictions, take responsibility for our need for power and certain things, unhealthy power, take responsibility for like this need to have like pleasure in different areas, but in an unhealthy way. Like the moment like our addictions are just like hiding back here and we pretend they aren't happening, and the moment we're like, you know what, I take responsibility for this, and I know that this is happening in the background. They're not in the shadows, they're like right in front of you, and it's super awkward and it's super uncomfortable. But then every time that addiction or that thing comes up into the space, it's like you know the difference. You're not hiding from it. And there's such growth because there's this perception with like spirituality and all this sorts of things, is that like we're trying to get rid of everything. And it's just like, nothing can actually be fully removed. It's just like, it's transforming into something else, because it's just, everything's just an exchange. So it's just like, when I'm removing a demon from someone's body and throwing it in a portal, it's like I'm removing that entity and I'm putting it through a portal and letting it go home, but there's this exchange of like, there's a give and there's a take with that. And like we get to choose what those addictions, what those things transform into. And a perfect example would be like if you were severely addicted to alcohol or something. And so that obviously lowers the consciousness, and different entities embody the body because the vibration is really low. But then you come out of that and you acknowledge and take responsibility for that, and then you become someone that helps someone like in recovery. Like you're a coach for addiction. You're an addiction coach. So it's like you were able to transform that lower space that you're operating into something that was effective. Because we hear this all the time where like if you dealt with things very dark and deep things in your life, then it's like you were able to switch that and give even more to the world because you know the depths of the darkness, but also were able to reach that light. So it's like so important that we not build this frame around like, well, this is how I'm always been, this is how it's gonna be, and I don't know how to no, we can transform it. It takes time, it takes responsibility, and it takes a little oomph, but we can get there. Anything else you want me to tap on, universe? Let me see. Another point came through. So again with this, like we can't have like a healthy, prosperous relationship if we're in the low centers. But when we're building relationships, we have to have our relationship coming from the heart space. When we are building relationships with all these different entities and all these different chakras, because if we're like trying to build a relationship with say for the example that I had before, like the throat chakra, to know when someone's telling the truth, or to know when if we should make that decision because it's going to make us wealthy. If we're doing that out of a space of fear, or trying to get ultimate pleasure but in a bad way that's taking away from someone, if we're building relationships with these different entities from those lower chakras, then we're not going to be able to maintain them, and that's when we lose our psychic abilities. That's when we lose our intuitive nature, because we're not like connecting and building from the proper space. And I hear this all the time where it's like, I was able to do this, but now I'm not able to do this. I was able to do this, but now I can't only do it when this happens. And it's because you didn't build a solid foundation. You built it out of this need for power. You built it out of this need to impress. You built it out of like something that wasn't, like it didn't have a pure intention. So then it kind of just fell apart. So we need to be able to build this foundation from a space of like, I need to serve myself, but I also need to be able to serve the people from a genuine space, and not from a space of trying to impress or trying to have overall power. Because once everything, all the lights are turned on in the house and you're just like able to see this and do this and like all that kind of stuff, there's like this, the ego is just like, just gonna creep in here, how you doing? Just it like tries to overtake the body, and it just wants to like, I don't know, be like, hey everyone, look what I can do. And it's just, you're welcome. And it's not exactly, it's just like there's a difference between feeling empowered and the ego taking over when you're working in these intuitive spaces. And you'll find like when I'm doing this intuitive work, I'm very like, I wouldn't say harsh, but just direct, and here it is, because it's just like I have to turn off like the sweet quiet and let in whatever entity needs to come through. It's like a different, like my higher self, or whatever you want to kind of sits in the body and does the talking and lets the thing come through. It's like the only way to not allow the ego to take over the space is if you let yourself move out the way, move out the way, and you let the information to come through from the entity that it needs to. So if you want, so like the throat chakra is literally an entity, and you want it to communicate something in a certain way to someone, let it come in the body and do its thing. You get to be the gatekeeper of what you want to move in and out of the body. And of course, when we're doing this, we want to make sure we got no creepy ass whatever sneaking in. But obviously, you're gonna be fine if you're eating good food and you're not drinking 80,000 glasses of wine and all those sorts of things. Because the higher your vibration, there's going to be things that are going to be very attracted to you, and it's just like, we're going to have all these intuitive gifts. It's all great. But then people are going to be like, hey, I was just wondering if you could just, remove this thing, or give me a free whatever, or like, people are going to start like trying to drain you of information, or your skills, or your knowledge. It's just like, bruh, I ain't here just to serve you here. Like, we want to serve, but we also don't want people to take advantage, because a lot of the time the people that are doing that, they're just looking for validation of like, I just want to know this one thing, but it's not really important long term. Like, they're just trying to like get a quick fix. There's like a quick fix kind of person, and it's just like, that's not our job as intuitives. And we'll get into the responsibility as being intuitive. We'll get into that later on. But it's just like, we need to also be very conscious of who we're giving the information to. So it's like, we've done all this work, we're here months into this program, we've built all the scaffolding, we know how to do the stuff, we know what information needs to be used, we got this, everything is great. But then it's like, great that we have all the information, we know what things mean, everything's fantastic, but then we also need to know who we're giving the information to, or why we're giving the information in the first place, and how we want to like package it into the world. So you've packaged it in your mind, but how do you want to give it to the world? So this masterclass, so I'm structuring the downloads that I've been getting into a 7-day masterclass that leads into the program of how this all actually works, and all the exercise and stuff that's on May 3rd. So it's just like, I'm giving all this information, here it is, there you go. And it's also, how do you want to give the information in regards to like the physicalness. So I talk about this all the time, where I'm a physical and seeing kind of human. So when you get this information, do you need to talk at a screen for an hour about it? Or do you need to write a book? Or do you need to write a poem? Or what do you need to do? You need to do it through dance. I don't know how that, do what you gotta do. But allow like the information to express itself in the way that it needs to, even though you may not want to do it. So I know in the 4 Pillars of Success program, whatever, in like, I think it's in like, I don't know what module it is, but like, I'm gonna make the humans in it do things in all these different types of ways, so they know what ways they connect to, and they know what ways they ain't feeling very much, so they have to do that more. Because it's so important that like, not only do we have that information, but we know how to efficiently give it to the world, because it can be like a hot mess. You're just like, I got this, just like all this stuff, and you didn't really like, it's just a hot mess and nobody can understand it. Like, that's not what we're going for here. We need it to be crystal clear.